Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Today, can satire survive in a so-called post-truth era? We chat with a panel of noted comedians about the power of political satire.
And while you're leaving your comments and questions in the YouTube chat, take a look at this rant by actor and political satirist Tom Walker.
The left is responsible for this result because the left have now decided that any other opinion, any other way of looking at the world is unacceptable. We don't debate anymore because the left won the cultural war. So if you're on the right, you're a freak, you're evil, you're racist, you're stupid, you are a basket of deplorables. How do you think people are going to vote if you talk to them like that? When has anyone ever been persuaded by being insulted or labelled? So now, if you're on the right or even against the prevailing view, you are attacked for raising your opinion. That's why people wait until they're in the voting booth. No one's watching anymore. There's no blame or shame or anything, and you can finally say what you really think, and that is a powerful thing. The Tories in charge, Brexit, and now Trump. And all the polls were wrong, all of them, because when asked, people can't admit what they think.
Looks real, but that was Walker's fictitious television news reporter Jonathan Pye in 2016, commenting on the election of US President Donald Trump. Walker's rants as Pye have racked up hundreds of thousands of views online, making him a social media sensation while raising the ire of people across the political spectrum on both sides of the pond.
Political satire has been traditionally used as a tool to punch against those in power, a way to voice the concerns of marginalized groups who sometimes aren't given access to the public square.
So what are the particular challenges of doing political satire right now when what's happening in the real world is sometimes more outlandish than any fictional news headline? We're joined in the studio by Jonathan Pye creator, Tom Walker. In Los Angeles, we have in California, we have Kristina Wong. She's a comedian, a writer and performance artist running for public office. And in San Francisco, Francesca Fiorentini is also a comedian and correspondent for AJ. Hello, everybody. It's really good to have you here. Hello.
Hello.
All right, I'm expecting the barbs to come free and flowing. Kristina, if you could describe what you're doing right now with political satire, can you do that for our international audience? Because right now you're in a specific space and a specific
this is my
journey.
campaign headquarters in Chinatown,
right.
Presented by Art Salon Chinatown, so it was presented by the art world. And I'm not actually on tomorrow's ballot. I'm just campaigning. I realized after years of making spectacle on theaters and guerrilla actions that I could no longer outdo the spectacle of real life politics. And so I'm just going to bring my spectacle to where it's happening, which is the political stage. So at some point I will file and run for office. But currently what I'm doing is giving campaign speeches, shaking babies, kissing hands, trying to stage endorsements, get endorsements from white conservatives who normally probably would not endorse me, and just sort of stacking my deck and collecting bribes, things like that.
What's your slogan?
It's the name of my failed reality television pilot, One Wong Makes It Right. I actually had pitched a reality TV show that True TV picked up. They paid for a pilot. We pitched it when Obama was president. Then we had to shoot it when Trump was president. And I sort of blame that shift for why everything about the persona that I had pitched then about this sort of naive, self-centered activist conquering political apathy. It made sense when Obama was president. And then by the time we shot it, in March of Trump's presidency, it made no sense, and or just everything just flipped upside itself, and they turned down the pilot. They turned down buying it for a season, and so I found myself an out-of-work reality TV star.
Campaigning, and the rest is hysterical.
Where have we seen this before?
Running for office, shaking babies and kissing hands. I had to write that down. So that is your platform. I want to introduce our audience, in case they're not familiar with your platform, Tom Walker, with this piece here. I'm not going to play it because this is for the BBC, but I want to show our audience my problem with mansplaining. This is Jonathan Pye. This is your character. And I bring this up because you got some pretty high praise for this in the form of Ricky Gervais himself, noted comedian and originator of the original Office, the UK version. Ricky says, I just watched your bit on mansplaining. Brilliant, brave, raw, analytical, without forgetting to be funny. I like to think that I could do something as crafted and detailed if I had the patience and the energy. So high praise indeed.
I can die happy now. I
Right?
mean, that's my next poster quote just done. Thank you very much, Ricky. Let's move on. Yeah, I mean, that particular bit, I mean, I must explain that Jonathan Pye, the character, and me, you know, we're lefties, we're liberals. But what I find with satire these days is that, you know, certainly in the UK, and I've seen a little bit of it here, I mean, in the UK, our satire shows a half an hour of aren't Brexit voters stupid? And aren't Trump voters stupid? Well, one, that's not true. Two, it's tactically not clever. And three, it's boring, you know? So what I try to do with Pye is, because he cares about the left and liberal ideas, he shines a light on the left just as much as he does the right by telling them where they're going wrong. And they are going wrong. You can tell that because of who's in the White House at the moment, you know? Something went wrong along the line, you know?
And because Jonathan Pye cares, is it because you care too?
Yeah, I mean, certainly with this thing about, you know, left, I care deeply about free speech, which isn't very fashionable on the left these days. Certainly in my country, I think in America it's under attack. And what's interesting for me is the comedy world. I'm very new to the comedy world. I started off as an actor. Of all the art forms I've ever encountered, and you wouldn't think it, the comedy world is the most censorious, the most sensitive. I mean, the attacks I've got from the comedy world just for standing up for the principle of free speech. Suddenly you're alt-right, you're a Nazi apologist. It's bonkers to me. So it makes me double down and go, no, this is you're never going to win if you keep down that road, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Francesca, I just want to play a little clip from your work, which is done on some of the Al Jazeera platforms. So you would think that you had quite a conservative audience, but then here's the material that you're doing. Have a look.
Geography. And now Americans are learning that the Syrian civil war is arguably the 7-layer dip of wars. You've got your authoritarian, your rebels, your civilians, your foreign superpowers, your warring factions, your stateless fighters, topped off with a whole lot of misinformation. In other words, an amazing way to f*** up a potluck. Syria is about as easy to understand as a third grader trying to give you a synopsis of Game of Thrones. Okay, so the Assads are like the Lannisters, and the US is like the Starks. Or maybe they're the Targaryens. Putin is Ramsay Bolton, and Theon Greyjoy is fake news.
And I'm thinking conservative with a small c, not a big C. Right?
Yes, I think, well, that's an interesting thing that you noted there in terms of the way that Newsbreak was born out of Al Jazeera, right? And born out of an online platform that is really targeted at young people, and so much of the language that young people are speaking, I think ever since The Daily Show, but going back, really is through satire and through comedy. They want to be informed, but they don't want everything to be so serious. I think Tom's character speaks to that as well, right? Whenever you break down this buttoned-up newscaster, I think that especially young people are going to listen much more than they would if you're just over the top sincere. So I think Newsbreak set out to do that, and I think we gained new fans. I think some AJ Plus people who were used to seeing, let's say, the Syrian civil war only treated through the lens of being that buttoned-up newscast, which I think after so many years we all tune it out. There's a way we both tune out what we think is like distasteful or, you know, something that is off color, but then also we tune out things that are way too serious and sad. So how do we get people to pay attention? And that was our first attempt at talking about something so grave.
Kristina?
I mean, I just think I hear what Tom is saying about free speech is under attack. And I used to be someone who's like, yeah, let's just have at it. Let's just say whatever we want until people began to take Alex Jones seriously and then act on those things, or until someone was like, oh man, I got to go shoot up a synagogue because the synagogue is helping these folks.
The guy that shot up the synagogue is responsible for his own actions. Donald Trump didn't do that, and Alex Jones didn't do that. And also, by Alex Jones now not being allowed a platform, that he doesn't go away. He goes underground by suppressing an opinion. You don't wipe the opinion.
I have to say, I love Alex Jones as a performance artist.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you that.
Performance artist.
I'll give you that.
I will say performance artist. Yeah, I love it. But I don't know what's happening because it's shifting culture in a way that I'm like, ooh, this is now I think people don't understand how human rights works and are making decisions based on what they think that Alex Jones is telling them, or showing up at a pizza parlor to whatever. People make their own decisions, right? They go make a decision, go shoot something up. But if they're getting those orders from someone at the top or someone who is positioned as an authority, and there's nobody challenging them or no space that's challenging them, that's not right. Then,
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think
that's what has me questioning what's going on.
Tom, I mean, I agree with Kristina, and like I definitely hear where you're coming from. I'm someone who believes that you don't have to just punch up. I think that people blaming Stephen Colbert for, and satirical news for the reasons that like Trump got elected, that's obviously ridiculous. I do believe in free speech, but all speech actually isn't created equal. Unfortunately, we don't live in a petri dish of life and politics and economics. Unfortunately, the president's words have way more meaning. And when the president says, was it Soros? I don't know. People say Soros is paying for migrants to come across the border. Who knows? Like, that actually matters more than my little YouTube channel saying that, Melania Trump, bathes in caviar. Like, whatever. So, like, I think that in theory, just like libertarianism, it's all good, but in practice, you get the Koch brothers.
But in practice, Donald Trump is in the White House. I mean, and on the trail to the White House, it seemed impossible when he came out with those awful remarks.
Mexicans are rapists.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff.
African countries are assholes.
Absolutely. And you go, how can he possibly win the White House now? And he did. So there is a problem here. We have somehow Donald Trump. We bred Donald Trump into that White House, which perhaps 20, 25 years ago, when political discourse was perhaps a little bit more. Look at where political discourse is. The left think everyone on the right is an alt-right Nazi, and everyone on the right thinks everyone on the left is a communist snowflake.
I mean, that's obviously a total
the discourse certainly
mischaracterization of
online.
the left.
There isn't
Completely,
discourse. It's just attack.
We're here to talk about satire and comedy.
Yeah.
And I will say, we need it to survive authoritarianism.
Yeah.
We need Tom's work. We need Kristina's work. Hopefully we need my work. If we don't have political satire, we won't get through this. If we don't all, and I think on the left and the right, take ourselves less seriously while also pointing out the just brazen hypocrisies of the people in power, and by making fun of them in absurdist ways, in smart ways, in whatever ways we want to, then we're not going to survive. So in some ways, it's more critical than ever, and the field is way more crowded, right? But I always say, listen, as it's hard to be a political comedy writer in 2018 because immigrants are not stealing our jobs. The president is.
So
Francesca,
on your point about satire and comedy
I'm out of
writing,
work as a performance artist
having to survive. Kristina, I hear you there, but I want to bring in our community here because they had so much to say on this topic. And on that point you were making about how this can survive, I wanted to bring in this from Giordano Nani. He's the writer and creator of something called Juice Media, and he writes and produces a series called Honest Government Ads. He impersonates the government and he makes ads about issues, with the difference being that they are honest. Here he is.
I think it's one of the reasons I have created this series, Honest Government Ads, is because a lot of the problems that we face today come from our governments. These are the leaders that we've put in place to act and take action on things from climate change to corruption to closing offshore tax loopholes, all this sort of stuff. But they don't serve the people most of the time. And I'm not a anti-government person per se. I want to see an honest government, and so this series is as much of satire as a wish for the future.
Kristina, I'm wondering what your take on that is, especially because you are running for office.
Well, I'm running, and then I am going to run, and what I'm finding in this process is how, as much as you think it's as easy as like just run for dog catcher, it is very expensive to run a campaign. And just to file in California, you need to pay 3% of the first year's salary to run. So for governor, that's about $3,500. So even if I'm running as a performance art piece, that's a significant amount of money. And then like someone like Gavin Newsom, I think raised about $50 million up to now. So this is not something I can pull off. And to get that money, you got to kiss a lot of butt. And it's a very tricky dance that I'm learning just in trying to navigate. What am I going to run for? How will I do this without getting a sunstroke at Whole Foods collecting signatures? And how will I court donors?
And also, Gavin,
Yeah,
let me just
I
say
know.
for our international audience, Gavin Newsom is a very well-known politician from California.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah, so it's that. So I get it's very tricky to figure out how to and getting endorsements and having to say the right thing to a union or association of nurses. It's such a weird game of building this army and that you can't just have this opinion as an artist anymore. So a lot of this is me trying to negotiate what I used to believe in as an artist and seeing how does it apply to me courting backers. And it's very tricky.
I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people often say to me that I find it really weird when they say, I agree with everything Jonathan Pye says. You go, well, then you're mad. But two, lots of people say, will you run for office? Go on, please run for Pye for PM. And sometimes they're not joking. And you go, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue where to start, and I would have no desire to do it. Satire, all satire is to me, and I totally understand what you're trying to achieve, but satire to me is just about looking at something from a different angle, and shining a mirror on something. You get things wrong, you use hyperbole, you go over the top. The idea of running for office, I can't imagine anything worse, so hats off to you, really.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, but it's the only way I could figure out how to address things, because it would take even by the time I would get to a stage to address what happened that day, Twitter got to the punchline first.
Are you serious about running for office, or are you doing it to just...
Yes, I'm running for office.
But no, what I mean by that is are you doing it to see what it's like to run for office? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I'm running. I would like to run to win, and in that, it's a process of learning how this works. I mean, I could be like the thousands of people who run as a joke or just to see their name on a ballot, but I am going to run as a performance artist. I will bring my crazy paraphernalia with me wherever I speak. I will.
May I ask? But do you have a political agenda?
I do. Yeah. I'm also testing out stump speeches. My agenda right now is just to finish sewing this set and to get people to show up at my rallies and
Kristina,
wear my
is this
pin and make my money back from the posters. Oh, it's not tomorrow. I'm not on the ballot tomorrow. But I'm thinking that if everyone who listens in California writes me in as governor, I can be a surprise winner, I guess.
Let me just share with you some of not Francesca's work. We've seen Francesca's work, some of Kristina's work, because I'm wondering, are there any topics for political satire that are too taboo to tackle? And there's something on our YouTube channel that just jumped out at me. It's Radical Cram School. So we are now going to Kristina's Radical Cram School. Have a look, have a listen.
Hello, my young comrades.
Hi.
I'm going to show a picture. This is my way of figuring out if you've been tainted by the patriarchy.
Patriarchy? What? Oh, who's that?
Who do you think it is?
This looks creepy.
It looks creepy. Why?
There's just like this thing about white people that just makes me be like, if they're like right there in a pool, and I'm just like walking into the pool, and they just give me the death stare, and then I'm just like.
So if this guy was in the pool, you would moonwalk out.
Yeah.
Does he look like a good guy or a bad guy?
Bad guy.
Who do we think this is? Make a guess.
Oh,
Dumbledore. Who is he married to? Who's your guess?
Katy Perry. It's Donald Duck.
What do we know about him? What do we know about him?
He's bad. Unfortunately, the president. I want to fire him. I want to build a wall.
How do we feel about this wall?
Kristina, I think there's some budding political satirists right there. But here's the question. Guess. Anything that's too touchy, too sensitive to make fun of, to make a political joke about? Franny, do you want to go first?
Oh, I'll let
Kristina
go.
The kids in that series, this was more shot like a documentary of that day, of me seeing if we could. A cram school is a nickname for a tutoring center in the Asian American community. They get because you're literally like cramming all these subjects, and so we thought, what if we could cram them with social education in a day? And so we didn't put any of those reactions in their mouths, and a lot of people are like, you're indoctrinating the kids. But for us, we created it because we felt like, how do we teach kids to deal with the xenophobic rhetoric that is floating around now in the Trump era? And it's not too young, because 2 of our producers were parents of one of the kids and actually suggested that we do it because they live in Ohio, where she's one of the few Asian girls there, and she's understanding that people are looking at her weird, and she's sensing how things have changed since the election.
I'll jump in and say that, I mean, I think you get, doing online content, you get a lot of responses. I'm sure you guys both know. And of course, one of the biggest, I think the biggest moment of this year in terms of political satire was Michelle Wolf's White House correspondent speech, right? And her monologue, where she made fun of Sarah Huckabee Sanders' lies, but then utilized her makeup, right? Said she will burn lies or burn the truth, and then use the ash to make a perfect smoky eye. Of course, the media went absolutely insane, and a little bit to Tom's point about kind of the oversensitivity that, and I don't. Again, it's one strand of, and in this case, it was actually much of mainstream media and liberal media that was like, you've gone too far. And I would actually say that a lot of mainstream media, and specifically liberal media, only says you've gone too far when you make fun of a woman on the right. Making fun of women on the right is absolutely a no-go zone. So right-wingers go crazy, but you can say what Hillary Clinton ate 5 babies this morning as she wagged her lizard tail. Like, that's a perfectly normal sentence in most people's minds. But if you make fun of Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
that's a good sentence. You should use that.
Listen, it's got great
Francesca, it's on that point of oversensitivity that I want to weigh in here, because our community is doing that. So this is the gamer who's writing on YouTube Live. The ability to humiliate the politicians is what makes political satire effective. Not sure you all would agree with that, but that's one person's view. So in talking about the role and the responsibility that satirists have, Maz Jobrani, famed comedian, writes in that the role of satire is to expose hypocrisy and make fun of those in charge when they deserve being made fun of. Ricky Gervais has another thought on that. He says its only responsibility is not to break the law and cause actual harm, the same as anyone and anything else in an ideal world. Tom?
I mean, the question was, can you go too far? And is there subjects that, and the simple answer is no. I mean, my number one fan, Ricky Gervais, always, he quite often says, that, and it happens all the time, that we mistake the subject of a joke for the target of the joke, and that is often a mistake. So I don't think anything should be out of bounds.
All right, so guests, I can't believe the time has flown this fast. We have less than 1 minute left for you to tell us where you're appearing next. Tom.
I'm appearing tonight in the Studio Theatre of some theatre in Washington. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm on at 7 and 9, and there's tickets still available for both shows.
Kristina.
I'm doing a show with the undocumented immigrants at the Dream Resource Center near MacArthur Park. It's free. It's at 7 o'clock on Thursday.
Oh, I love we have working artists on the show. Francesca.
All right. Tonight at the Punchline in San Francisco, pre-election show, and also November 15th at the Ice House in Los Angeles.
All right, Francesca, Kristina, Tom, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your insights on political satire. Thank you. Good to have you.
Now, before we go, we want to leave you with a sneak peek of a new doc from our colleagues at Witness. Halima takes us into the world of former refugee and current fashion model Halima Aden. I traveled to her home state of Minnesota on Friday for a screening and a discussion of the film that's now streaming at aljazeera.com.
Achievements for a girl who was once a refugee. She's now posing for shoots, strutting the runway, and rocking the hijab.
This cannot be my life. I've never really fit into any mold or any group. I've heard it all, like you're not Somali enough, you're not a good Muslim, you're not American enough.
weli farxadeedu waxa u sugaya Xaliimo oo ka baxdo
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm dying.
18. Husband, house, pregnant. Wait.
Not an easy thing to be when the world wants you to be like one thing or the other. I think in all groups, somebody has to go out and be the first.